So let's start with, your history. So you had a couple of success stories before Budderfly. Explain to me what it is that you did before you started this current company.
So, and I hate to pin myself as a serial entrepreneur because that has like a bad connotation to it.
No, just serial killer has a bad term. Serial entrepreneur is fantastic. You've created a lot of jobs.
You can tell we practice this. So I've built 3 companies in my life, each one in a completely different industry. I actually appreciate entering a new space because I feel that you have a fresh set of eyes. And I have to tell you, the energy space is full of opportunity. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. And pitfalls, but there are ways to overcome them, which I think at Budderfly we probably have done. But 3 businesses, I started my first one when I was 24. You could tell I'm a bit older than that at this point. And did them for a really long period of time. Some disruption in both of those. My last company, we created the telecom expense management space, which I think was well suited to get into the energy space because of our knowledge of billing systems, et cetera, which is frankly where all the economics passes.
Well, so what I cared about on that deal is the fact that your revenue per customer was pretty low, right? So fundamentally, you had to acquire customers pretty cheaply to be able to make that business work, right? This software as a service type of business, right? And so
you're saying my last one?
Your last one.
Yeah, our average ticket was about $250,000 a year.
Yeah.
Very different than Budderfly.
Right. And so I think but what you brought to Budderfly, is this ability to acquire customers, I think, at a very low cost, right?
I did. One of the thematics that I think is worth sharing, but just to give everyone some context, I don't really want this to be as much about Budderfly, but more around the learning from maybe what we've done that can be shared to go tackle other opportunities. So I'll qualify that right up front. We've grown to about 250 million. We're going to do in excess of that this year in 7 years.
Yep.
And, probably defined as unicorn. I have been critical of the energy space to some degree in the spirit of innovation. There are not enough unicorns, which is the sign, in my opinion, of not enough disruption. And having come from a different space to come into this space and creating a model that's very different, which we can cover quickly, and we're being successful at it, is proof point.
Yeah, but the thing that I love about what you've done is, for 20 plus years, folks have focused on the mush market, right? Municipalities, universities, right? Schools, hospitals. They've focused on $100 million contracts, right? With ESCOs. And you guys basically said, no, let me help Subbloie franchises, right? And these franchisees hadn't maintained their ovens, hadn't done the basic things that they needed to do. And in this exact moment that we sit in, where you have energy rates that have gone up 30% in the last 4 years, we expect them to go up another 10% this year and probably next year, given the way this administration is managing the grid. You're in this place right now where your services have never been more important, and the customers you want to help are still the hardest customers to serve, right? They're the ones that you can't pay a salesperson, $4,000 per closed sale when the entire sale is $12,000, right? And so how is it that you have figured out how to get to $250 million of revenue with such small tickets?
So let me start out with the problem. This drove me crazy. It was 2017. We're all sitting here talking about demand exceeds supply, too much carbon in the air. And yet the premise that everybody agreed is we could pull 30% of the waste out of the current existing usage base. And that kind of drove me crazy because I said, well, that's ridiculous. And we have all the technology to get that done. Why don't we do it? So the reason we don't do it, I pulled out an ESCO agreement. I measured it with a ruler. It's the first thing I did, about an inch thick. And it had 6 pages to define the notion of risk. Well, that means 2-year sales cycles. It's going to take our lifetime to get anything done. Yet we're looking at this 30% reduction opportunity. So what I ended up doing is creating the industry's first outsource model where we just take the whole thing over, all of it, including the billing.
Meaning their bill.
Including the bill.
Yeah.
And we end up being the official account holder of the meter. It's a bit unique. Nobody actually does that. And we take responsibility to make sure that bill gets paid. Not as a payer like an NG would do, but we are the responsible party.
Yeah, so if their bill before was $1,000, you agree to pay that $1,000. If you drop it to $500, they pay you $950 per the contract, and you make the difference between $950 and $500.
Right. I'm going to make a comment here. I believe the industry needs more technology to achieve scale than technology for products. It's going to be a different comment.
Well, I mean, I'm Mr. Business Model Innovations.
Right. So
I agree with you on that.
And while we have 60 patents on products, the point is we ended up writing a billing system that somewhat sits between the utility and the customer. By doing so, I created automatic measure and verify in the billing system. And we bill it. So just by the sheer billing of it, everybody sees the outcome that comes out the bottom without lifting a finger. Customer doesn't write a check for anything. There's no risk paragraph. We bear it all. And then we spend our money to upgrade all the things that this country should do. And I'll give you some stats on it. We're getting about a 50% reduction in HVAC replace, which is the same as an LED light was 8 years ago. That's crazy. By the way, I believe HVAC single-handedly second to cars is one of the big issues we have.
Jim is smiling right there in the audience. He's got a big old HVAC company himself.
Yes, I know, and we do business with them, and we love it. We had a great relationship. I think we'll install close to 5,000 HVACs this year at a 50% carbon reduction. So for us, it's all about scale, and you have to build a model with the end in mind. I fear that all these good ideas, they do not scale fast enough.
And that's why I wanted to go through all these details, right? I mean, I do like to bore the audience, but the main reason I want to go through this is that, we're talking about a public-private partnership, right? Yeah. And in this moment, we have a political firestorm, right? So yesterday we had the PJM governor's meeting, right? So Governor Shapiro goes up and says, basically a veiled threat to leave the PJM. So did Pritzker, so did Westmore, so did Governor Youngkin from Virginia, right? That is not good. I don't want anyone leaving the PJM. But they are frustrated by the fact that rates went up 20% last year, and they're probably going to go up 20% next year, given the capacity auction. And everyone is talking about batteries. Mm-hmm. Everyone's talking about solar and wind. They're talking about the interconnection queue. But they're not talking about energy efficiency.
Correct.
Not that I can tell, right? And I think here's a person who is not just serving $100 million contracts, right? You're actually figuring out how to get into, mom and pop stores and saying to them, you also deserve the best-in-class technology to be able to figure out how to, reduce your bill by, X percent, right? And so my sense is that in this moment, the vast majority of those governors who made those speeches yesterday have no idea how the PJM works or how the electricity system works or even what the difference between a distribution grid and a transmission grid is, or even AC power and DC power, right? But they do know that 20% rate increases 2 years in a row is very bad for them politically, right? And so you've got, the two folks running for governor in New Jersey, the two folks running for governor in Virginia are talking about affordability every single day, right? And, I don't think there's a lot of public officials looking at you and saying, these kinds of companies can 10X.
So we have raised about $1.1 billion company 7 years ago, and we'll probably do another $1 billion in the next 3 years, and faster if I could scale it, certainly quicker. A couple takeaways from your comments. Rising rates aren't great, but they do allow the introduction of innovation and returns on business models. That's a net positive from all that. Second, and this is going to be, I'm split on this one. I personally am not happy about the removal of incentives. But with Budderfly, if you're going to build a company that's successful, I'm not sure who would ever want to depend on a 4-year cycle of change. Right. And we took that out of our machine 4 or 5 years ago, including a reliance on tariff risk. So we've had really zero impact from that because we took a more capitalistic view. Now, the truth is, I hate capitalism personally in some ways. We'll have another discussion about that.
Well, so do a lot of people in New York City, apparently.
But that was a good one. The reality is I'm the poster child of capitalism, as you can see, and if you're going to be in the jungle and win, you have to learn how to be able to create a model. A couple of things in the energy space that I don't like. It's a very siloed, fragmented space. There's no integrated concept, and what we did at Budderfly is we outsourced the whole thing, including VPP.
Virtual power plants.
Virtual power plants. And whether it's demand management, connected thermostats, IoT devices for measurement and sub-metering and HVACs and upgrades, we do it all. Customer doesn't have to lift a finger. In this market, the poor customer has to figure out 60 different things to do. And when you put a market in that position...
While running their business.
And this is not a mainline part of their business. So it was tailored to outsource. I'm frankly shocked not more people have outsourced total solutions. Take the software industry. They integrated and consolidated. I mean, look at Oracle today. Look at what happened. Look at how they got there. Same pattern should happen in energy. I'm afraid there are too many regulated issues. There are too many challenges, and not enough people that want to, frankly, disrupt the status quo at this point.
Right. So I mean, one of the challenges that I think you're highlighting here is trust, right? I mean, and so this is obviously a very essential part of the operations of these businesses, and outsourcing it to just anybody isn't the right move, right? And that's also where a public-private partnership can be helpful, right? And you guys are obviously self-serving, which, I think you're doing a great job. But, having, folks who on the public side say, these are good guys, they're not actually like here to, take advantage of you. They're here to help you get your equipment maintained properly, make sure that like your bills actually go down, that you're actually, like not having an unexpected outage where now you can't sell your goods and services for a week while something gets an emergency repair, right? All of these things are things that I think people do appreciate and want, right? But there's some validation required from the public sector, right? And so how does that go, right? I mean, New York City obviously has had local law 97 for the better part of 8 years, right? And so there is this vision of a public-private partnership in New York City. There's a vision of this in other cities around the country. But, like how does that sort of trust building, work for you guys?
Well, first of all, I'm a big fan of the green banks and have been.
Yeah.
They've been great institutions. You had brought up the middle market or small business. I didn't plan on that one, by the way, Jigar. So in February of 17, we won Subbloie, the sandwich. We won 40 of them. At that point, I was happy to win anything, right? And what I realized on those two, because I'm a big believer what we did was for scale. If we're not going to have an impact if we don't get to big scale. The beauty of that market is there's two things. Rinse and repeat. You do 10, you might as well do 10,000. They all have the same outcome. Even in a public-private partnership, that's comforting for anyone who wants to give us $500 million. It also, on the sales front, allows us to do land and expand. So our ability to add, this is why we're growing so much, but we only started in that market. We don't mean to end there.
No, I don't mean that, but I do think that the public sector broadly is worried, right? It's worried that many of the solutions providers are interested in large accounts. And you're going to serve some large accounts too, because you built all the rails to be able to do small and large accounts. But that a lot of the, small guys get left behind, right? Because they're not, that's not the focus of most businesses, right? And residential is clearly left behind in most places, right?
Would love to do residential.
Sure.
The CAC, the customer acquisition cost, the solar folks are suffering from it, right?
No, it's real. It's absolutely real. But I think that in this moment of extraordinary pain, right, where you have 1 in 6 households in our country that are behind on at least one energy bill, I think that this industry represents an extraordinary job creation opportunity.
Right.
Right? An extraordinary, sort of like hands-on jobs creation opportunity that can't be taken away with AI. And it's also something that, can save carbon emissions, right? And help us manage data center load growth and all these other things, right? And so part of what I'm concerned about in this moment is that I think a lot of the public sector officials that we talk to are not up to speed. These topics were fully outsourced to other people on their team who also were not up to speed. And those people that outsourced it to the Public Service Commission, who basically is like, well, we're here to regulate utilities. We're not here to run, energy, right, per se. And so there's no one minding the store. I mean, there is no public official who's supposed to be an expert in all these issues.
So, look, a couple of points. Let me give you the top-down view that I look at. There's about $150 billion a year of our electricity spend, commercial, that should be able to be impacted to drive about a 30% carbon reduction from it.
Which is massive.
It's almost like wartime. right? The train, you'd be cranking out HVAC units, and we buy your highest efficient unit, and they work great, honestly. And
they've got a nice copy station over here on the left.
But the technology innovation that I felt was necessary is you can't manage what you can't measure. So we actually put in a sub-metering network in every customer, along with the way the billing works, is we can prove the outcome. So even for a government official saying, I'm going to support financially also investing in this, the return is there. When you do it 8,000 times, that helps.
It builds trust.
It builds a lot of trust. But if I run the math for all of you on 150 billion and we suck 30 billion out, put the carbon equivalent on that.
You said 30%. I'm not letting you get away with that. 30%
I agree it could be
$150 billion is $45 billion.
Yep.
It's holding you accountable.
That's why I've got you here.
Well, some of us can still do math. Look, I think that I think we're in a place right now where I think all of the people in this room believe in what it is that you're doing, believe in what a lot of the folks who are doing battery storage are doing, believe in a lot of the work that folks in the HVAC sector are doing. And I think one of the things that we need to figure out right now is how we bring a lot of these communities together, right, to really dispatch an army of people who want to help their neighbors, right? We are in a situation where we have, subnational officials here that Climate Group has brought from the United States, from Brazil, from Mexico, from Colombia. All of them are having similar issues, right? And they all want to know, how they can be most helpful in this moment, right? To, reducing the pain that's being caused by all these high energy costs, right?
Right, and the way to do it is to reduce friction at almost every point of interaction. And honestly, it was in 2017, I went 30 customer meetings, and I said, at this rate of speed, we're going to be $10 million in 10 years, and I don't have patience for that.
Yeah.
So change the rules of the game to simplify. By the way, the beauty of this is there's an economic outcome that's justified, and it works. That's the part and we have all the technology to do it.
And the last thing I'd say, I know we're out of time here, is that I do think that the abundance stuff does have relevance here, right? There are many local regulations that make it more expensive to serve customers, right? And a lot of those local regulations were there for all sorts of really good reasons from the 1960s and 70s, but today they need to be rolled back. And I think for many of us, it was Sunday, right, that Bill McKibben and Jamie Henn launched on Sunday. They've got 70,000 volunteers that have signed up there to go to their local communities to try to roll back some of these regulations that make it more expensive to do business. And I think for all of you, going out to your networks and pledging yourself to doing that work within your sphere of influence, with your city council members, your mayors, your school board members, I think it's important in this moment that we really reduce a lot of those regulations so that we can actually scale these solutions fast.
So 2 examples of that would really help. If we are targeting 250 sites with HVAC replaced and 500 units, we're lucky to get 160 out the door.
Yeah.
Because of permitting.
Yeah.
So it just keeps pushing the can forward. Second, we have a 10 massive battery project. We're going to spend about $2 million on batteries. And we can do that because, again, we own the account. Customer gets a benefit. Love to be able to get that done quicker than 6 to 9, 10, 12 months.
Yeah. Totally.
Especially when we roll that out to 500 and 5,000 and 10,000. It would make a big difference.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.